Swami College, Ausa, which is in District Latur, State Maharashtra, India, finds this opportunity of International E-Conference to welcome all honorable dignitaries and participants here at the virtual platform. The topic of today's International E-Conference is Emotional Sherpas in Students. The college, Sri Kumar Swami College, Ausa, is affiliated to Swami Ramananda Tirth Marathwada University, Nanded. The college conducts various activities for students and stakeholders. International webinar series and international e-conferences are the part of it. And all these efforts are made for the enrichment of knowledge and for the exchange of knowledge. All these are going very well and without any interruption, and it is due to the hard efforts and perseverance of Chief Organizer, Honorable Principal Dr. M. Ambedkar Sir, who is also the chairman of today's International E-Conference. On behalf of Organizing Committee, Sri Kumar Swami College, Ausa, International E-Conference, I welcome you, sir. Today I feel immense pleasure to welcome another honorable dignitary, Janet Barrett ma'am, who is mental health advocate from USA, who is going to enlighten us on the topic emotional Sherpas in students. On behalf of Organizing Committee, International E-Conference, Sri Kumar Swami College, Ausa, I heartily welcome you, ma'am, as the chief guest and keynote speaker for this International E-Conference. And I would like to invite you, ma'am, for your presentation and keynote address. Please, ma'am, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm very excited to talk to you today about being an emotional Sherpa. And it's a different thing than being truly resilient. And it actually impacts everyone, not just students. It impacts everyone in all of our lives. And so I hope that you are ready to get started to talk about being an emotional Sherpa. And so I'm going to tell you 3 different things today. I'm going to talk about what an emotional Sherpa is and how it is different than being truly resilient. Because those 2 things actually get confused fairly often. I'm also going to talk about how, as individuals, we become emotional Sherpas. And you'll see how that can build throughout our lives, and how if we can talk to students about it at a younger age, we can stop them from having some of the issues that being an emotional Sherpa brings. And then finally, I'm going to talk about what you can do and things you can teach your students if they find themselves becoming emotional Sherpas. So let's get going. Are you ready? And how are you? I hope that you are doing great. I am. This is my passion. As was mentioned, I am a proactive mental health advocate. And so I get really excited when I get to talk to people about what an emotional Sherpa is, because it's something that we actually didn't understand 10 to 15 years ago. But before we get too far into it, I want to ask you that same question. How are you? Are you okay? What's going on in your life? It's the same question asked in a much different way. The first one is something that we ask every day, and we answer it the same way with, we're doing well, we're okay, we're fine, we're hanging in there. But very rarely do we take the time to simply sit down and say, how are you really doing? What is really going on in your life? And to make that connection with another individual. And the reason that I talk about this, when I talk about being an emotional Sherpa versus being resilient, is because when we start our day in the classroom, we want to start with the excitement and the energy. We want our students to be ready and engaged. And we don't always have the time to take it down a little bit deeper and say, how's it really going? Because this picture illustrates the difference between being a resilient person and being an emotional Sherpa. The person on the left is the person that we show the world. It's the person that answers the, hey, how are you question with great. We don't show anybody what's really going on inside, that deeper connection, which is the person on the right, because we're all carrying things around. There's always other stressors that are going on in our lives, and we don't tell people about them because very rarely do we make that how are you connection. And our students see us doing that. In fact, we teach our children to become this person that carries around a very heavy load, but never shows that they're doing it. Because that's what we as a society expect. And the difference between being resilient and being an emotional Sherpa is that the resilient person knows how to set that heavy load down. They've learned that, yes, you're going to have to carry that at certain times, but if you don't learn to set it down, eventually that rock, that boulder is going to crush you, that you can only carry that weight for so long. So that's the first point I told you we'd talk about today. The second point, how did we get here? How did we become emotional Sherpas? Well, it's because when our kids are little, we teach them that they need to suppress their reactions. Well, that's not entirely true. We teach them that they need to suppress some of their reactions. So let's start with happy. When our kids are happy, what do? They smile, right? We smile, we encourage it. In fact, we're taught that when somebody smiles at us, we smile back. It actually, when you become happy, our shoulders go back. Our breath becomes deeper. We take bigger inhales, which increases the oxygen in our blood, and our blood actually starts to flow faster throughout our body. And it releases a hormone called endorphin that flows through our body and makes us feel good. And we encourage it. In fact, there's a song that we have that's, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And we teach our kids, this is a good thing. And then take it to the next level. You're excited. Your cricket team, they're winning. Yes, you get really excited. You jump up and down. You can't wait for something else to happen. You're on there. They're on the pitch. All of your friends are around you and you get really excited. And that's a great thing to show. But then what happens when you're sad? We might cry a little bit, but don't cry in public. Definitely don't cry at work. Don't cry in front of your students. Really just cry a little bit, but not too much. I was at a funeral for a friend of mine a few months ago, a 52-year-old father, and he left behind a wife and two children, a 13-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. Well, actually, he turned 10 the day after his father's funeral. And at their dad's funeral, they both got up, that 9-year-old and that 13-year-old. And they talked about how much they loved their dad and the things that they were going to miss about him. And They were able to do it and keep it together. They didn't burst into tears. And afterward, they had a receiving line where the family stood, and the hundreds of people that came to pay their respects went through and told those kids, wow, you did such a good job. Hundreds of people complimented two young children that they didn't cry at their dad's funeral. And nobody ever said, I hope you cry later. Because in that moment, it may have been appropriate to put that burden on. But at some point in time, you have to learn to set it down. Now let's talk about anger. You're scared, you're mad, you're jealous, you're hatred, you're frustrated. And all of that builds up inside. And how do you show that? You don't. We teach kids, we do not show that. No, no, no. In America, there's a common phrase that says, you get what you get, and you do not get upset. That's what I was told when I was a kid. I was sent to my room. I couldn't come out until I could be nice. But if you think back to when you were a child, or think back to some of those young kids that are in your education system, what do they do when they get mad? They stomp their feet, they slam the door, to do something physical. And we tell them to suppress that. But that physical reaction, we now know from research by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk that not teaching kids how to safely release that is what makes them emotional Sherpas and stops them from being resilient. Because as they carry that load with them, it continues to build and build until eventually they snap. And as teachers, as educators, you will see that in your classroom where a child has something happen and they overreact to it. You're like, why? What is going on? Well, chances are there's probably something else in their life that's happened that they've had to hold in and they need to release it. And so they do it, and they do it inappropriately. And so that's what we need to teach them. We need to teach them how to safely release it. And that's going to be the third thing that I'm going to talk about today. But before we do, I want you to go back and think about an event in your life. Sorry, my slides. There we go. Think about an event in your life that stopped you in your tracks. Usually it falls within one of four categories. It doesn't always, but I like to think about them as the 4 Ds. I love alliteration. Most educators I know love alliteration. And so I put them into this category. The first one is death. The death of a loved one will stop you in your tracks. Disease. You get a diagnosis, or someone close to you gets a diagnosis of a disease, and that will stop you. Divorce. I use the D because I love alliteration, but it really is any relationship trauma. It can be a significant family, friends, co-workers, colleagues, anything where you have some interpersonal conflict. And finally, I am American, the almighty dollar. That refers to any financial challenges in your life. But I want you to think about that event. It stopped you in your tracks, but what did you feel? What emotions did that event evoke? And when you're thinking about it, where do you actually feel it in your body? Do you feel the tension? Do you feel the sadness? Maybe it brings tears back. Maybe it brings anger or frustration. But where do you feel it in your body? And do you still feel it in your body? That last question is the most important question that I want to ask. Because if you still feel it, if it still really triggers those emotions in your body, it means that you're still carrying it around. And I know that because I went through 5 decades of my life continuing to carry the weight of so many traumatic events until finally one event ended up breaking me. It wasn't that one event, but it was the culmination of all of those life events that I had never dealt with. In fact, it was hard for me to even speak about them because I would still feel it. When you hear people giving trigger warnings that they're going to talk about something, they do that because people are still carrying that emotional load around with them. And so now I want to talk about that third thing. What do we do about this? So, historically, there have been a lot of things that we recommend people do, and they are all really good, and I still encourage them all. If you find yourself in a very traumatic situation where you're feeling overwhelmed, talk to your doctor. Maybe that can help you. I know I needed to take medication when I went through some of my traumatic events. I also encourage people to have therapy. Therapy, going to talk to somebody about what's going on in your life, is incredibly important. But I will tell you what we've now learned within the last 10 to 15 years is therapy and medication really good, but they are not enough. And those are not my words. Those are words from Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who studied this and understands that now we know that that physical suppression, keeping that inside our bodies, is what's preventing us from fully setting it down. We can talk about it for decades, but not setting it down is where we have fallen short. And so there's 2 other things that we always recommend: yoga and meditation. And those are really good for learning how to connect back with your body. What they're not good at is, if you're already carrying something, carrying that boulder on your shoulders, is helping you set that down. So if you've done all of this and you still can feel that inside, what you need to do is to learn to set it down. And there's 3 steps to setting it down. The first one is identify what emotion it's actually triggering. When I ask the question, when you think of an event that stopped you in your tracks, what emotion did it trigger? Chances are you probably thought of something on this wheel. This is the emotion wheel. Love, fear, anger, joy, surprise, sadness. What is it that you're feeling? Now, this emotional wheel, though, doesn't actually stop here. And this is a tool that you can take and give to your students. You can teach them that those initial feelings, you can actually go much deeper. So let's take anger, for example. You're probably actually feeling enraged, exasperated, irritable, jealous, or disgusted. And guess what? You can even take it another level deeper. So say you were jealous. You felt anger, but you're like, actually, I'm really just jealous. Then teach your students, was it really resentful, or were you envious of someone else? What is the source of that emotion that you're actually feeling? Because understanding that will help you understand, what do you need to do about it? Now, I've put on this slide where you can find this resource. If you'd like to go download it, you can go to my website, janet-barrett.com/emotion-wheel, and you can download it and share it with your students. It is publicly available. The second step is to figure out which bucket it actually goes into, which bucket of release. How do you need to set it down? Because there's a physical release that you need to do. And in this case, it pretty much falls into two buckets. Because if you were on that happy side of the wheel, the positive emotions, you've already physically released it. You've already smiled, you've already cheered, you've already laughed. But if you're on more of the negative side, chances are you're either in the sad part or in the anger part. And so which bucket you falls into determines what physical release you need to do. And so you actually need to combine that therapy and thinking about it and feeling it in your body and then actually letting it out. And so when you're sad, you probably need to cry. As we said earlier, you can't necessarily do that in public. So you need to find a time and a space where you can sit and safely release those tears. But it has to be related to the actual event. Think about it, feel it, and then release it. On the other side is the anger bucket. When you're angry, how can you let that out? For some people, it's screaming, like this image says. For some people, it may be punching a pillow. Some people like boxing. Other people like dancing. There's a million different ways that you can physically release it. And what's really interesting now is that every single therapeutic modality that is being developed includes this research to teach people how to feel the emotion and then physically release it. But it's the third step that actually is the most important step. After you know the emotion, you know how you need to release it, you need to find a safe time and a safe space to do so. And that's what you can help your students understand, is that in the middle of class, probably not the right time to share and express that emotion, but they need to set aside time for themselves where they can. And it might be just a little thing. Somebody annoyed them in class. They, cut them off in a line where they were setting up to go outside and they got mad. Well, there's a really easy release. You just go, ah, but maybe they need to go to the bathroom and do that release. But it's that key is the physical release of that emotion after they felt it, in order for them to set that emotional baggage down, to stop being emotional Sherpas and to start actually becoming truly resilient. And there's one last thing that I'd like to leave you with to think about. Because if we know from research that it's important for us to set that baggage down, how big does your backpack need to be, or your student's backpack need to be, before you're willing to set it down? And the way that you can help your students learn how to set that backpack down is back to that simple, how are you question. Making that connection with your students where they know that they can come and they can talk to you. That first thing, that therapy, it's not therapy, but that connection is just as important. Where they have a place where they can say, I'm feeling this, because they know you are that safe time and that safe space. So thank you for listening. I would love to take any questions. I know there's some hands up.
Thank you, ma'am, for your elaborate speech on the topic, emotional Sherpas in students. You have talked in it about all the aspects related with the emotions. So, wonderful lecture. After this, I invite all participants and delegates with their questions, observations, opinions on the topic. Please, participants.
So I see one raised hand. Yes, I see one raised hand. If you want to put questions in the chat, or do I let them in?
Monica ma'am, do you want to ask question, please?
Hello, madam. First of all, thank you very much for this session. I am a professional coach and I work with students in a college in Bangalore, in India. And in fact, I try to teach them a little bit to manage their emotions. And because it's very complicated, sincerely, exactly for this reason that you mentioned, that we suppress too much when we are children, our emotions. And in India, even more, because India, at least till now, was an extremely conservative country in certain issues and topics. Now it's everything opening, and they express a little bit more. But what I only wanted to tell you that I thank you very much, because you are really gifted, because it's difficult for me to feel something when I listen, especially because I know very well this. I felt it in my body. So you were able to bring me back to that moment where my sister passed away for an autoimmune disease, and again I understood that I didn't completely release that, even if it happened 5 years ago. So I realized in this moment, so I realized that energetically you are very gifted. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Monica. I truly appreciate your words, and my heart breaks for the loss of your sister. I know how traumatic it is going through the loss of somebody that close to you. And it takes a long time and a lot of work to let it out. I will tell you, I have a lot of people that I work with that say they're worried that if they do this, they're going to forget. And I always say, you'll never forget. But what you do is you release your burden. It's still in your mind, and you will never forget them. You will never forget the fact that it does hurt, but it's not going to host the weight on you that it has over time. And I will tell you, I had the privilege of working with a variety of companies in India. I used to be a management consultant, and I know exactly what you're saying about the people and the suppression of emotions and the desire to always show positivity. And if you're working with people, it's really nice because you think everything's happy. But when you really looked behind it, and I, again, was very lucky, I got to work with some wonderful individuals and became close with them. And they eventually would open up to me. And I'm like, you can tell me if there are things going on, don't hide that from me. I am one of the people that you can absolutely tell. And so some of that is what led me to this work. And I really hope that it can make an impact in every culture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. I have a question. Yeah, I'm Dr. Seema from Bangalore. I just wanted to share my own personal experience on this topic. In 2020, during pandemic, I lost my husband. So I keep trying to cope up this and come out from this. One or other day, again I will go down and I'll be in depression. Again I'll come up. I'll make myself busy. I'll do a lot of work. Apart from college, other activity also I involve. At one fine day, I'll go in the same mindset. It's very difficult to completely come out from these situations. So I'm trying my level best. 4 years going to be over, but still I'm in the same stage. I can say myself out of 10, 6 rating. How long it will take to come out from this, I don't know.
Sadly, there is no way to know when you will come out. It is a process. First, I want to say thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable, because I know that is very tough to do in any forum. So thank you for doing that. I am heartbroken about the loss of your husband, as I know you are. I don't know if you have, but I encourage journaling, because sometimes it's really hard to verbalize some of the things we're feeling, and journaling can really help. And that can also help allow us to do the physical release in a way that feels a little bit safer inside our body. And I will also tell you that what you've been doing with the keeping busy is something that I and many other people have done. It's a form of numbing. It's a way to avoid feeling those emotions. And it's a very healthy, a very normal, and a really good thing to do. And I want you to know that, because I don't think a lot of people know that that is something that our minds do when something is too overwhelming for us to fully process. So you do need to eventually get through it, but what you're doing right now is very, very healthy. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Monica, did we already get Monica? Yeah, we got Monica.
Now I would like to invite Dr. Swanand Shukla sir for his observations. Please.
Hello, good evening, Dr. Bedkar sir. Hello, good morning, ma'am. A wonderful presentation about the emotions, and especially we are connecting it with our students. I belong to medical field and I'm a professor in medical college. So definitely the emotions of the students, the teacher has to understand. Many of the times it happens the classroom is a reflection of the emotion of the teacher. If the teacher is angry, the class will become silent. If the teacher is, you'll find his teaching, with a zeal and enthusiasm, the whole class, they start learning too much. So I think it is a reflection, what I feel. So it is very important that the teacher should have some kind of emotions, that will really boost the students' learning and enhance the learning process. That is what I feel. And always in the classroom, you'll find the heterogeneous, the composition is there. Some of them are really very intelligent. They can do by themselves also. But some of them require little push. But usually what is happening in the classrooms, the people who are not doing well, we try to reject them. Our emotion, becomes little different for them. What I feel, we should bring that essence, of the subject in their mind also, and we should take them in our journey. They should not be, left alone, and they should not be, rejected or dejected. So that is what I feel. So it is very important. Emotion is very important. If you want to create interest of any subject also, I think that emotion of that subject is also has to be used. So what do you think about this, ma'am? Please comment on this. Thank you. Otherwise, wonderful presentation. The way you have presented very well. And, we could get each and every word. I was listening carefully. So that has provoked me to ask this question. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor. I truly appreciate your kind words. And there's two things that I want to say. When you were talking about being in front of the classroom, and you said if you're angry, it makes them silent. And that's a very good description of what happens in how we've taught people to react to emotions. So you said if you're excited, they get excited. So they reflect that positive emotion. But if there's a negative emotion, we shut down. And so that's exactly reflecting that emotional Sherpa. So to your point, if you can bring that energy to the class, it definitely helps motivate and engage those students. And when you talked about, if you notice that someone in the class is having a different response, that's when you need to make that connection. That's when you need to go to that deeper, how are you level. Now, that being said, I am sure in India, just as it is in the United States, there's a million demands on your time. And so it's not always possible for you to be that person for your students. If you can find in your organization someone that can be that point person and have them approach the student, it's not the most ideal. The most ideal is to be able to have somebody that they have daily interaction with have the connection, but I understand it is absolutely not always possible. And so I really encourage organizations to find someone within their organization to be that point person, to be able to explore that with the students, because those emotions are so important for them to understand and not carry around. Because as you said, you're going to bring them into the classroom. In your case, you're educating doctors. You don't want them to take that into the operating room or the therapy room or whatever room that they are in with a patient, because their perception and their interaction and the way the patient reflects on them is a direct reflection of how they're entering that room. And if they bring that weight in with them, it's going to make it much harder for them to have a positive interaction. So thank you. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. There is a connection between biology and behavior also. So behavior changes our biology and biology changes our behavior. That is what I feel. And very well explained about endorphin and, sympathetic tone and parasympathetic tone. They are playing a role in our body. So we are very happy. I think our parasympathetic tone is taking care of ourselves. So that tone we have to maintain rather than sympathetic tone, anxiety, sorrow, sadness. We have to neutralize those kind of things. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Wonderful for your expression and explanations.
Thank you. I didn't get into it very deep today, but there is a lot of biology behind this, specifically around hormones and how those are related to our emotions. And so that is incredibly important and true. Rahul?
Yeah.
I see you have your hand up.
Yes, please.
Or Mira. Yes, Mira.
Hello, Janet. Thank you so much for explaining so simply such an important aspect of life. I love the slides. So amazing. So when you asked us to think about a situation in our lives, it took me back to the death of my father. And I realized at that time, I could not express the pain or the tears in my ears, because you have to be strong for your mother and the other people in the family. But I think I was lucky that after a point of time, I had my me time and I cried and sobbed my heart out. What worked for me was that I thought of my father for the good things, for the joy we shared, for the talks we had. Rather than feel sad about his absence, I decided to celebrate his presence in my life every day. And I think that helped. Also, as you said, journaling also helped. Writing things down when you couldn't really express what you were going through, or yet you were crying and bleeding inside, really helped. Thank you so much also for helping me realize that I'm resilient and not an emotional Sherpa. So that was such a nice feeling as well. So thank you so much again, Janet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. And thank you so much for sharing and for being vulnerable. I am so glad that you could be strong for your family when you needed to be, and then took the time to release those emotions. I will tell you, having spoken to thousands of people, you are the first person that has ever gotten up and told me that. Okay. And it is so heartwarming. I'm not kidding. I have tears welling up because I'm so happy. You are the embodiment of everything I speak about. And so I am honored to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Principal, sir.
Hello. Thank you, madam.
Karan sir.
Thank you for this very wonderful session. Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Bedkar sir, for this wonderful session. Just I am from education background, so that I am asking the question: what are the different strategies to know the emotions of students to make teaching learning process effective? If there are some easy processes to understand the emotions of students, so that we can make the total process very effective, or to enhance the process.
So for you to know, or for the student to know their own emotion?
For the students, we want to know the emotions of students at the time of teaching learning process in the classrooms.
I got it. So you're teaching students how to identify their emotions, giving them that wheel. And I can actually give, and I will send this out later. I don't have it right here. But in addition to that wheel that I showed of the emotions, there's actually descriptions behind each one. And the way that I teach it is I teach students, we start with kind of that small wheel, and we talk about what is it that your body would feel. And so we go through, we say, love. Let's describe love. Let's talk about an event in your life that love is experienced. And then where do you feel that in your body? And then each student will actually go through, and it's a worksheet. It has the emotion on the left, it has the description in the middle, and then it has them write what their physical response is to that emotion. And I always start with the positive ones because those are easy to do. And then we get into the negative ones. And it takes a lot of time for anybody, students, adults, anybody, to actually go through and know how their body reacts. It's actually easier the younger that they are, because they haven't fully learned to suppress it yet. So if you're going through with younger students, it's even better, because if you teach them young, they can identify it later. And so teaching them, okay, here's what it is, here's an understanding of what that type is, and here's how you feel it. So if you start to feel it, you know, oh, that's jealousy, that's envy, that's frustration. And then teach them to articulate it. Because again, you don't want them freaking out in the classroom, but you want to teach them, hey, when they come in, I'm having a day, I'm really frustrated, this happened at home, and teach them to then express it in the classroom. I do not have a classroom. However, what I teach other teachers to do is to, if they want, they can either have a board in their room, and in some cultures this is appropriate, in other cultures this is not, where students can indicate what type of a day they're having. If they're having a green day, which is a good day, a yellow day, not so good, a red day, where it's not good at all. And those red day students get somebody that they can talk to. The green students were fine. The yellow students, they can make the choice if they want additional help or not. So it starts you out understanding what they are. If you can't do that publicly, you can also have them submit, and I only have one class that I know of that does this, but they're older students. And so they don't want to be sharing what their emotions are, but they basically fill out when they are coming into class that day. It's similar to what we had to do during COVID. We had what was called a COVID attestation. So this is an emotional attestation where you say, I am feeling, and whatever the answer is that day. And it simply goes to the professor before class starts, so they know when they're coming in, kind of what's the feeling of their class. And if most of their class is saying, I am really stressed today, then they can start. And my recommendation is, if your students are in a stressed state, is to actually start with a bit of mindfulness, a small meditation, something to get them centered in their body, and say, okay, let's release some of that stress. Can't do the individual work, but we can do a group work. Let's release some of that stress so we can focus on what's here. And just simply acknowledging that people are feeling that at the beginning of the class in general allows students to engage in that class much more effectively. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Thank you, madam. Just I want to discuss this thing because in India's situations, the classrooms are very crowded, madam. 40 to 50 students to 60 students are minimum in the classrooms. And so that this is challenging to understand the emotions and to get near to the students with understanding the emotions. So that I am asking this question. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to jump back in. When you have that many, if you can't do any sort of visual representation, what I recommend, and I recommend this to all teachers every day, if you can come in and take 1 minute at the beginning of the class to just say, I want you to feel what you're feeling. Close your eyes, feel what you're feeling. Nobody talk, just feel. Own that feeling for this minute. And when we're done with this minute, then we're going to engage in class. And that, again, gives them just that ability to say, okay, you're feeling something right now. We can't necessarily deal with it. And with 50 to 60 students, that is a lot of students to be able to manage. But just giving the acknowledgement, like a lot of people just want to know, somebody heard me, somebody listened to me. They acknowledge that I'm feeling something and that's okay. That alone gives students so much more valid feeling that they're like, okay, I can engage now. I don't need to hide this. I hope that helps.
Thank you, ma'am. And now I would like to participants. If you have any question, please. Anybody else? I feel now there are no any questions. So after this very fruitful, meaningful discussion session, now it is time for all of us to listen the closing remarks of Honorable Principal Dr. M. Ambedkar, sir, about the topic. Please, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now I am here for vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank today's honorable dignitary, Janet Barrett ma'am from USA, who has delivered a very nice lecture and touched each and every aspect related with the topic of today's international conference, emotional Sherpas in students. And really, we all are benefited and enriched because of your enlightening lecture. And these points will be very important for all of us. So, on behalf of the organizing committee, I sincerely thank you, ma'am. And also, I thank you for accepting our invitation and sparing your precious time and valuable thoughts for all of us. So, thank you, ma'am. I also thank Honorable Principal Dr. M. Betkar, sir, for his efforts. And his efforts are very continuous. And because of him, we all are coming together from different parts of globe to have a discussion, to exchange knowledge and our thoughts among us. So thank you, sir. I also thank today's active participants, Meera ma'am, Seema ma'am, Monica ma'am, Rahul sir, Dr. Swanand Shukla sir, and all participants and delegates who punctually attend the webinars and international conferences and make it very meaningful and fruitful through their presence, through their questions, observations. So thank you, participants. And I request participants, please fill feedback link which has been posted in the chat box to have your certificates. At the end, with the kind permission of Chief Organizer, Honorable Principal Dr. M. Betkar, sir, I declare here that today's international e-conference is over, but expecting your cooperation even in the future from all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
फीडबैक लिंक सर सेंड कर दें.